Welcome to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership, where you'll hear insights and useful strategies, as well as lessons learned from other nonprofit leaders and valuable tips from a variety of experts. Here to help you with the challenges and opportunities you face day after day is your host and nonprofit leadership expert, Sarah Olivieri.
I'm Sarah Olivieri, and today we're going to be talking about 3 tips for measuring your impact at your nonprofit. Now, this is an issue that I have been in search of for years, and almost every time I see a training on measuring your impact, it's almost always ends up being a training about measuring your finances. And I got to tell you, money is really easy to measure, but really measuring whether or not your nonprofit is making an impact, meaning that you're making the maximum impact possible you can at your organization, is another thing. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So give me just a couple minutes and we're going to dive in. For those of you who don't know me, I am a business coach and trainer, mostly to nonprofit leaders with over 2 decades of experience. I have been an executive director, a board member, and then for the last 10 years or so, I have been a service provider, coach, trainer, and marketer to nonprofit organizations. So let's dive in to how do we measure impact? Okay, so the first thing we need to do is identify the most meaningful outcomes and indicators of those outcomes for our organization. So, what do I mean by that? So we need to think, and usually our mission statement has the key information here, right? What are we ultimately trying to achieve in our nonprofit? Are we trying to end homelessness in a specific county or a specific region? Are we trying to address an issue around hunger? Are we saving animals? So that's going to be the core thing. And then surrounding our mission, and this could be some of you might have this as your theory of change. My clients using the impact method. You have your impact goals, and wherever you have goals around your specific programs, each program should have essentially its own mission, right? Its own goals that it's trying to achieve. So you might have a program that is trying to educate people on how to keep their pets healthy in an affordable way. And you might have another program that's actually providing care for those pets for families who need additional financial support in caring for their pets in order to keep them at home, right? So, goal for the program that's providing the care is maximum, how many people are getting how much care, right? So we have 2 key measurables to be thinking about. And the program for education is how many people need education. And you can create some artificial, if you need to, levels of education, right? So, what are the kind of tiers of knowing about affordable animal care that need to be in place? So, that is basic primer, if you will, on identifying meaningful outcomes. Now, the next thing we need to do is have a way to measure these things. So, and there's two sides of this coin to measuring. There is measuring what you're doing, and then there's measuring the whole need that's out there. So, I'll use my animal care example. Let's take our program that is providing medical care for animals for families who need financial support in providing proper care. We might measure both how much care are we giving and how many people are getting that care or how many animals are getting that care. But then we need to look at the total need, right? How many people need this? And then we're going to subtract how many people we're giving that from how many people need it. And that I like to call your impact gap. And so what we want to be doing is closing the impact gap. And that is my third tip for you. So, when we are measuring whether or not we're making the maximum impact possible, what we need to be watching closely is the gap, right? So you may serve 200 animals this year and 300 animals next year. So that sounds great, right? We served 100 more animals. But what if something horrible happened to the economy? And last year, the overall need was, let's say, 500 animals needed care. We served 200. That means the gap was 300 animals who did not get served. Now, this year, we served 300. But let's say instead of 500 in need, there was an economic crash, and now there are 800 in need. So we went up from 200 to 300, but now we need to subtract 300 from 800. So now we've gone from a gap of 300 to a gap of 500. So our gap increased. Now we have to ask some questions. The gap got worse, right? The gap increased. In this case, in my example here, this is an external situation. So we need to think about, are we going to scale way up? Do we have a way of helping to fix the external situation, right? Is there something that needs to be done around the economy? And so we need to be watching that gap. So we might be saying, okay, growing from 200 to 300 was good, but it wasn't good enough because we have this increasing need. Or we might answer some questions, right? This data measurement helps us ask better strategic questions. So we might say, okay, the gap increased, but was this a temporary situation that is going to resolve itself, or other people are going to resolve it, and then we'll be back to our normal 500 in need, in which case we will have reduced the impact gap in a couple years by maintaining our current course. So are we shifting course or are we maintaining course? That's that question that's coming up in my example now. All right, so quickly to summarize here, my 3 tips for measuring your impact, which is going to open up our ability to ask better strategic questions, are: identify the outcomes you're trying to get in your mission overall and per program. Then your measurement strategy should be measure what your organization is doing and then what the need is related to those measurements in the area that you're serving, and subtract so you get the gap between the total need and the amount that you are serving that need. And then finally, make your strategic decisions around the information that you have gathered. And you do want to keep gathering this information at appropriate periodic intervals. So that might be weekly, monthly, annually, every 3 years. It kind of depends on how readily you can get the information and the nature of the information. That's all I have for you today. If you want tips like this delivered to your inbox, go to pivotground.com/sign up for weekly tips. Or if you'd like to be in the room getting help from me, closing that impact gap, I invite you to consider joining the Thrive program. You can go to pivotground.com/application. You'll fill out a few details about your organization. I will review the application myself manually. It's not like an automatic thing. I will get back to you. And if you're approved, we will discuss more details about joining the Thrive program. Or if it's not a recommended, I'll let you know that. And if I have anything other way I can help you, I will let you know, or I can point you in the right direction.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.